Hi everyone, it's Maria from The Pages of Ink, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my January wrap-up. I read a total of 10 books this month, which I was super proud of, so let's get into the books. The first book that I read in January was Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. I actually read this on audiobook and I DNF'd it at 33%. The story wasn't working for me and I really didn't like it, so I'm giving it 1 star at 33%. I might pick it up in the future, but I'm not sure that I will. The second book that I read this month was The Young Elites by Marie Lu, and I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. I thought Adelina was a brilliant, badass protagonist. She wasn't a heroine, she was actually a pretty evil character, and she had some sinister ideas and ways to inflict pain upon others, which I thought was kind of crazy, but I absolutely loved the plot of this book and I'm so excited. I really want the next book, The Rose Society, right now. P.S. Marie Lu kills it again with descriptions. The rose scene, oh my goodness. I need to read those pages a few times over again because I just loved the words. I marveled at the chocolate richness of her descriptions and they were just so beautiful. You know what I'm talking about if you've read this one. The next book that I read this month was Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I gave this book 4 stars out of 5. I really enjoyed this one. It was a really nice light-hearted read. If you can't tell by the title, it's a retelling of Cinderella, and I thought the elements of the old fairy tale were really well woven into the new dystopian, new Beijing society that our main character Cinder lives in. I loved that Cinder was part robot and I just loved all of the things that went along with that. So when she lost her foot and couldn't walk around, I really enjoyed the political conflict between Earth and Luna, and I can definitely see where this series is going to be going in the future, and I really want to pick up the next book because I really enjoyed this. So yeah, it's a super light-hearted read. You could just read it like just for fun. It's not too deep, it's not too dark, it's just really nice and happy, and yeah, it just makes you feel good. I did find the plot quite predictable, but you know, I'm not going to bring it down because of that because I really enjoyed it. So now that I think of it, maybe 4.5 stars out of 5. I really like this one. The next book that I read this month was Wolf by Ryan Gordon. This was not what I was expecting. I knew that it was set in Nazi Germany, as if the Nazis had won World War II and what that could have done to society and how that would change society. So this is an alternate history. I think that's the genre of story, alternate historical fiction. It challenges the idea of what if Hitler won World War II. The writing style was super interesting, magnetic and powerful. It just draws you into the story, and especially when our main character Yale was describing her past in a concentration camp, it was just so heartbreaking, and those parts were my favorite. I was not expecting a motorcycle race across the world, although there is a motorbike on the front cover. I didn't know what to expect with this book, so that kind of jarred me. I wasn't really prepared for that kind of a novel, but overall I felt a kind of disconnect from this story. I don't really know why. The next book that I read this month was The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. I absolutely adored this book, and I think it's the first 5-star that I gave this year. It follows a girl called Shahrazad, and the whole novel is a retelling of 1001 Nights, and it's kind of an Arabian classic story about a boy prince taking a new bride every night only to kill her at dawn. And I absolutely adored this book. It's written in 3rd person, but it's centered mainly around Shahrazad, and I adored her character. She's this sharp, brave, witty and silver-tongued girl, and I absolutely loved reading about her character. This is a girl who is unafraid and she's not scared to do anything, and I just absolutely admired that quality about her. She has this beautiful fighting spirit and a great calculating mind, and she's just overall a really smart character and also a very emotional and very real character. And then we have Khalid, alluring, enigmatic Khalid with dark eyes, and he is kind of the love interest of the story, and he is the boy prince who takes a new bride every night, and Shahrazad is the next bride in line. And so what she is trying to do is try and survive until the next sunrise. I found Khalid's character very interesting, very mysterious, as I said, and he had lots of dark twists and turns, and I absolutely adored their relationship together. I thought they were a brilliant match for each other. Shazi and Khalid were just so beautifully intertwined, and their relationship was real. There was no insta romance or love at first sight, which I think is entirely cliche, and there was just a beautiful progression of feelings and emotions of the characters towards each other, and I really, really loved that. It's set in a fantasy world but based really heavily on Persia and the Middle East, and I really enjoyed that because I don't think I've read a novel set in that kind of region, so it was great to have this beautiful Persian influenced world to navigate around, and I really loved it. High five for diversity. The plot was a tiny little bit slow at times, but honestly this didn't really bother me. That's my only little critique if I had to make one, but the rest of it was just so good. And I haven't even got to the writing yet. It is so beautiful and elegant and gorgeous and flowing, and just Renee does a brilliant job of writing. Renee, I absolutely admire and adore your writing style. It just crafted this beautiful world in front of my eyes, and I actually started this book on audiobook, but as soon as I heard the words and the descriptions, I knew I had to read it. I knew I had to see the actual book before my eyes because I loved the words, and she just painted this beautiful image of Persia and of the characters and of the plot and everything going on. It was just so beautiful. And it's a romance novel. And I usually avoid these like the plague because I don't like romance novels. I don't like when a novel is entirely centered upon romance and love and how two characters fall in love and live happily ever after, because I don't think that life is all about love. I think people can be very three-dimensional and have many facets to them which does not involve their romantic life. Although I do like having love in a story, I don't like it to be the center. But that changed when I read this book because, as I said, The Wrath and the Dawn is a romance novel. It's centered upon Shazi and Khalid's romance, but I thought it was such a real and powerful relationship that I didn't have any problems with reading about it. I loved reading about it, actually. So pretty much, go read this. You're not going to regret reading The Wrath and the Dawn. I adored it, and I give you my personal recommendation to go and read it. It is a brilliant book, and I hardly found any flaws in it, as I just told you. It was just so good, so good. Go and read it. The next book that I read this month was Forecast Turbulence by Jeanette Turner Hospital. Now, usually when I rate books, I like to rate them partly on the actual novel itself and also on my enjoyment. So for this novel, I'm giving it 2 stars because I honestly didn't enjoy it that much. It's a collection of short stories that all center around the weather, and they all have different ties to turbulent parts of their life, or how people continue to live normally throughout the turbulent parts of their life. And honestly, I did like some of the short stories in this novel, but I did dislike a lot of them, and some of them I found utterly disturbing, and I didn't really like reading it because of that reason. It's honestly a pretty quick read. I thought the pace was pretty fast, but it left pretty much every single ending to the short stories was very vague, and I didn't understand the reason. I didn't understand if it was supposed to be like a very broad kind of theme to look at, and she intentionally left it vague to keep some of that mystery flowing, or I don't know. I didn't see the purpose in not giving us a finish to the short story, or at least some kind of information as to how the events progressed. It literally cut off like the end of a scene and it just flashed to black. There was no fade out, and I didn't enjoy it because of that. But this is my personal opinion, and as I said, it doesn't critique the author or the novel itself. The subject matter is very heavy, so if you are thinking about reading this, make sure that you are wary that there is stalkers, self-mutilation, abduction, and overall it was a very disturbing novel. All in all, I didn't like this book. That's my honest opinion, but I do respect it. I do respect the author's writing style. I thought it was written pretty well, and I liked how each story kind of related to turbulence in people's lives and how the weather often reflected that. I didn't really like this book, so 2 stars. The next book that I read this month was The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I really enjoyed this book. It was so creepy and grotesque and scary. The split personality of Jekyll and the grotesque manner in which Hyde was described utterly scared me, and I was really horrified by this book, but I was so drawn to it, and I'm not really sure why. It's a short story, I keep saying book, but I was so drawn to this story and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. I was just drawn to it. It was like magnetic almost. Yeah, I found it really interesting, and the creepy London that it was set in was so good as well. The writing style was great. I'm pretty sure everyone knows this book and I just loved it. The next book that I read this month was Medea by Euripides. This is a play. It's translated by Philip Vellicott. And I really enjoyed this book. I thought it read really easily, and I loved the fantastic, strong protagonist that was Medea. But I did find her moral choices a little bit weird and kind of crazy, and I didn't really know what was going up in there. But I did enjoy this play, and as I said, it read really easily, and I was super surprised by that. I thought it would be kind of hard to kind of tread through, but it was actually very easy to read, and I enjoyed it for that reason. So I gave it 4 stars out of 5. The next book that I read this month was I Know Why the Caged Birds Sing by Maya Angelou. It feels wrong to rate someone's autobiography because I don't think I'm in the place to rate someone's life or to say that someone had a great life or someone had a bad life. So this isn't a critique on the plot or what actually goes on in the novel, but more so on Maya's writing style and story crafting. I really did enjoy this book. I thought Angelou's powerful writing style was so beautiful and elegant, and it was very poetic, and it made her memoir seem almost fictional because of the amount of descriptions and how she made every scene. It wasn't just these series of facts about this is what she did, this is who was in her life at the time, this is what happened, and all of these different things. It was more of a story, and I really liked that aspect that she brought to the novel. I'm astounded at the bravery of Maya. Obviously anyone who has read this story, anyone who just knows about Maya Angelou in general, is astounded at her bravery, and I think it was really inspirational how she overcame so many difficulties in her childhood to go on to be a beautiful woman and spread equality and just human rights for all people, black and white, living in America or not. And I just thought she was a great woman. It provided an insight for me as a white European teenager who lives in Australia and who has never really felt the full brunt of racism or oppression. It gave me the insight into the early 1900s life of a black person, and especially of a black female who Maya described herself as not very pretty as well, so she's disadvantaged in many aspects, and it just gave me a great viewpoint into that period of time that I probably wouldn't have been able to see if I was just reading the history or just facts about it. Or it gave me a real account of how she actually felt in those situations, and it gave me a deeper level of understanding of how people felt in that time, and I'm just really grateful for that. So overall, I loved this book. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. Again, as I said, Maya Angelou's writing style was beautiful, and the stories that she told were captivating, and some of them were heart-wrenching, but also some were so hopeful, and that's what I want people to take out of this book, is the message of hope that she brought through her novel and through her song, which could be said that is her novel. The hope that she gave to black people for a better future. The last book that I read this month was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and I really enjoyed this book. The writing is gorgeous. I just really enjoyed this book. I loved seeing Pip's progression as he grew up from a small poor child to a gentleman, and just seeing his progression, his different thought processes change and mold, and I just thought it was a great novel, and I'm entirely team Estella all the way. Sorry Betty, you're just boring character Estella all the way. But because I had to push through this novel to read it, my enjoyment level went down a little bit. It doesn't look like a big book, but it is 500 pages of Dickens, and it took me a long time to read it. So because I had to push myself and force myself to read it, it kind of lowered my enjoyment of the whole novel down, but that is entirely subjective. That is my opinion and my reading style, and it has nothing to do with the actual novel itself, which I think is a close masterpiece. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this book, and although I had to push through it, it was worth it in the end, and I'm so glad that I have read this book. So this concludes my January wrap-up. I read a total of 10 books this month, which I'm really proud of. I thought it was a great reading month, and if you have read any of these books, I would love to chat to you down below, so you can drop me a comment. So thank you so much for watching this video, and if you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!